Hello and welcome to another U.S. Tech Workers podcast. I am your host, Kevin Lynn, and today is May 23rd, 2019. And once again, I am joined by the really intelligent and very witty and sharp Adele Smith. Adele, welcome to U.S. Tech Workers.
Thanks, Kevin. I don't know what to say on that intro.
Well, we had great comments the last time you were on. Now, different this time from the last time, Adele, your website, No on HR 1044, is not just up, but it is roaring. And you guys are making great strides in this battle to fight HR 1044 and the companion bill in the Senate, S386. Now, before we go into it, for our audience who may be uninitiated on this, real briefly, S386, HR 1044, basically, this bill increases the per country cap on family-based immigrant visas from 7% of the total number of such visas available that year to 15%, and eliminates the 7% cap for employment-based immigrant visas. It also removes an offset that reduced the number of visas for individuals from China. Now, folks, what that language means is this. We have over 300,000, probably close to 250,000 people from India who are in the queue waiting for a green card. And they came here on H-1B employment visas, which are actually, they were made dual intent visas. So they're really not temporary workers. They can come here, apply for citizenship. That's what many have done. So they got here in a kind of non-traditional way. When you look at the way someone, let's say, from Honduras or someone from Nepal might get here. They came here through the H-1B visa employment program, and while here, they've applied for green cards, and they're waiting, and that's why there are so many Indians in this queue. Now, what keeps our immigration system, our green card system, being dominated by just one country like India that has so many people in the queue is a country cap. No country can exceed 7% of the total quota for the world. So that's been limiting the Indians. And so that's what, now the consequence, if this bill goes through, it is going to negatively impact skilled workers who have for the last 3 decades been displaced by this foreign expatriate group of workers that are brought over here by these third-party outsourcing firms. And they're not here, they're not used to augment, and I really have personally nothing against them, but the way they are utilized, the way these consulting firms like Cognizant, Deloitte and Touche, Infosys, and many others are using them. It's an all-out race to displace Americans and replace them with workers that make 20 to 40% less in terms of wages, probably non-existent benefits, and eventually offshore those jobs overseas, which is a form of intellectual property asset stripping from our skilled workers to workers in other countries. So with that introduction, Adele, welcome again.
Thank you.
So tell us about No on 1044, this wonderful site of yours. And I really recommend everyone go visit it because, you know, what I love about it, it's clean, it's informative, and it's all you do is you type in nohr1044.com and you are there. So tell us about your mission, Adele.
So yeah, thank you. I appreciate the time and the opportunity, and again, always love my conversations with you, Kevin. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things, not just the site itself, but we also formed a legislative action group around the site to get the message out to legislators, which is very, very important to do. With regards to the site, there's so many misconceptions about this legislation, and I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding and maybe deliberate misinformation that's being disseminated about what is happening and the reason why these problems occur with regards to the backlog. there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to the caps. You mentioned the 7% country cap. That actually is only partially true because there's a spillover. So what happens is that if a country doesn't use its full 7%, the remainder of it goes to a country that already is oversubscribed. So actually, in effect,
so really, so more than 7% get in. They're able to move that around to other countries that don't hit that 7% mark. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes. And if you look at, just one country is very oversubscribed, which is India, and they seem to claim a lot of discrimination, that these caps are very discriminatory. The reality of it is that the reverse is actually true, because when we looked at all these statistics, there's an incredible amount of data mining. We have a lot of white paper PDFs that are associated with it. I wrote a position statement on the site that talked about the importance of diversity, and now there appears to be a lot of other groups that are kind of co-opting and appropriating that message as their own, but I was the one who originated it. And the reality of it is that the reverse discrimination occurs, whereas India takes about 75% of the H-1Bs. They have about 17 to 18% of the world's population. The green card percentage that they receive is about 17 to 18%. So they are actually receiving the same percentage of green cards, employment-based green cards, as they are the percentage of the population of the world. That's a very important statistic. There is actually no discrimination against them. The country caps were put in place very wisely by Congress.
Because the idea was to have some diversity. I mean, the reason,
exactly.
We go back to the Immigration Reform Act of 1965. We looked in the mirror and said, my mother, for instance, came here in 1952. It was a good time for immigrants. It was a good time for native born. But the Immigration Reform Act of 1965 did was say, look, the problem is we are pulling most of our immigrants who come here from Northern Europe. What we want to do is see more diversity. And the idea was never to increase the numbers. I invite everyone to find the book if you can, but Eugene McCarthy, the very liberal senator from Minnesota in 1982, he wrote a book called Colony of the World. And in it, he stated his biggest regret of his time in the Senate was the Immigration Reform Act of 1965 and all the consequences. But the 7% that we see in there is reflective of that desire to have more diversity. And as you just said, Adele, if 1044 S386 go through, it's the end of diversity in our immigration system.
It's absolutely the end of it. So for me, let me just explain a little bit more about this, because as an American citizen, U.S. citizen, I'm actually the granddaughter of immigrants, as many people are. It's the melting pot of the United States. So for me, immigration and legal immigration is very important. But what most people don't know, unless they get to know me, is that my grandfather came here from Eastern Europe, and he loved this country so much that he joined the Army and became a paratrooper in the 101st Airborne, and he actually fought in World War II and was one of the first ones to parachute into Normandy and fought his way back to Utah Beach to secure the beach, and instilled in me a love of both this country, but also the need for diversity and other immigrants, and respecting other immigrants that are here, that we really do need to have people here from other countries. That's what makes us strong.
Absolutely.
The reason, the focus that I had just in terms of diversity, which seems to be catching on right now with a lot of other groups, is that this legislation, as you rightfully pointed out, will wipe that out. What will happen if this legislation passes is that for a period of about 12 to 13 years, there will be no other countries that will have employment or the related family-based green cards for the dependents for about 12 to 13 years, which means that the ethnic diversity, career diversity, industry diversity will be completely wiped out. And the problem here is that the green card backlog is so highly concentrated in one country and in one industry, it would have almost disastrous effects on a lot of other, just so many people. It would have disastrous effects on people like me in the IT industry. It would have disastrous effects for, immigrants that are here. And so I started a legislative action group, and we call ourselves Multinational Coalition, because we are a multinational coalition. The whole point and focus of this group is to let the legislators know that this legislation would have such a disastrous, deleterious effect on people who are so very highly skilled. So members of my group include PhDs, MDs. We've got PhDs who do cancer research. We've got PhDs who do research on epilepsy. We've got other PhDs involved in our group that do different things with different industry sectors. It's a very diverse, wide set of people there.
It's very difficult for you to find that level of talent, because there's folks like Ron Hira, who's a professor at Howard University and has studied the H-1B system very closely and other employment visa systems. He'll tell you the vast majority of people here on H-1B are quite ordinary in terms of their skills. They compete directly with our college graduates. They compete directly with our folks in the workforce. They are not highly exceptional individuals that are bringing an amazing level of intellectual property prowess with them. They're not starting companies. So that's another myth. I don't know if that was something you were going to address. But
that was exactly where I was going with this. Is the reason why we started our legislative action group was really to point out the fact and really drive it home that this legislation would very likely cause the greatest brain drain that the United States of America has ever experienced. The greatest asset that the U.S. has is its intellectual capital. Intellectual capital is not represented in that green card backlog. Very high percentage of people with bachelor's degrees from third world countries, and U.S. schools are the best in the world for a reason. And so if this legislation passes, people in my group, and I give them a venue that they can actually talk directly to the legislators, so that the legislators are not hearing it third hand. They're not looking at statistics. They're not looking at charts. They hear it directly from these people, what they're doing and why it's so vital to the United States. And there's so many issues with PhDs in particular. The one that we really want to keep here, we're trying to find cures for cancer, because if they can't get their green cards, they can't get funding for their research. It's as simple as that.
Exactly.
So it's going to cause a huge brain drain that the U.S. has never experienced before. That is the whole mission and point of why I started this group, is to point out from a diversity and a diverse set of immigration, why this legislation is going to be so damaging. So we already know there's a huge amount of H-1B abuse. That's been pretty well documented.
Exactly.
The legislators have heard that, but it all stems from a very dysfunctional H-1B program. This H-1B program has been co-opted, it's been morphed and twisted and abused, and it's caused this problem to begin with. Solving this problem is not this legislation. What would happen with this legislation is to allow one country to co-opt the entire employment-based green cards for more than a decade, and it would basically just distribute the backlog to the rest of the world, who is much more highly skilled.
Right.
And that's a net effect.
Yep. And for our audience, if you're more of a visual learner, go to nohr1044.com. That white paper, which is included at the bottom of your links page, there's table 4 on there that tells you by country, H-1B petitions approved, and you will see which country dominates that system in there. That's what I love. I love this white paper that you have, Adele. It's so informative, and you can get up to snuff on the H-1B issues with the H-1B program and this legislation very quickly, going through. I think it's like you have 12 slides. Oh, it's 13, 14.
26 pages.
26 slides. Yeah, absolutely. It's really an amazing resource, and I share that with everyone that I can.
Oh, that's wonderful. We appreciate that. Yeah, there's a blog on there on the position link there, which gives a very high level summary of what our position is and why we do that. But the arguments have been very, very helpful. And actually, we send that out to every single legislator that we talk to. And we've gotten some incredible emails back from, there's one legislator, I don't know if I should name who they are, but they send an email back saying, thank you very much. This is really helpful. We're going to distribute this among our colleagues. It's just it's a really incredible,
Yeah.
but you know,
It
we
is a
have
good
it, so
idea not to
download.
name them, because what you're doing, Adele, is you're going in, you are creating positive relationships. You're being seen as a subject matter expert and someone that they can go to. And it's great that they volunteered, that they are sharing your information among their colleagues.
Absolutely. And not only that, but some of the legislators, when I was in DC the other day, tell us that they are trying to reach across the aisles. So we actually told this particular legislative aide who else is really in their camp, who else feels exactly the way they do. So we're facilitating building bridges among these different legislators and these legislative aides, that you really do need to talk to so-and-so because they feel exactly the same way you do. We had an incredible call with them. You got to talk to them. And we listed out this whole list of legislative aides that we spoke to. And so, you know, we're doing our part to try and facilitate that flow of information and that connectivity there among all the different legislative aides that we're talking to, the flow of information, the arguments against it, what would really happen. We're trying to debunk a lot of myths, and that's basically what we're trying to do. There's a lot of disinformation that is disseminated vis-a-vis the lobbying groups and the advocacy groups for.
We have
yeah,
the
and we're
the commerce, which is, you know, just go to the Business Roundtable site. It's the Microsofts, the American Airlines, the Merrill Lynch, all these businesses that have been whole hog into displacing what they view as expensive and expendable American workers. I spoke with 2 tech workers today, and both will no longer have a job at the end of this month. And imagine that.
Oh, that's so
one
sad.
person, 21 years with the company. And
that's so sad.
It's
really always the older workers too.
Always the older workers. And one, you know, those jobs are, that job is going overseas, and the other one, interesting enough, they didn't fire any of the Indians, but they fired the 4 Americans, the one Black American, the one transgender American, and the 2 women. So much for diversity in the workplace. But interestingly enough, to show you kind of the effect that organizations like No HR 1044, our organization, U.S. Tech Workers, are having. One person I spoke with last week said when they were brought in to be terminated, she was brought in alone. There were 3 people in the office, and they were recording everything. These people are running scared. They know that there is a movement that is forming out there to represent and publicize how our workforce is being displaced. Our skilled workers are being displaced.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing that really kind of surprises a lot of these legislators is to have an American talk about the issue of diversity and with regards to legal immigration, skilled legal immigration, and how important that diversity is. And obviously, it's the same message for displacing Americans. And as an American in the IT industry, that's also near and dear to my heart. We do talk about both. We talk about the H-1B abuse and the displacement, which actually caused it. You know, the analogy that one of our group members uses, which is a really good analogy, is that, you know, the legislation S386, HR 1044 is really like taking buckets of water out of a bathtub that's filling up, that's overflowing. Unless you tighten that faucet down and stop the flow of water or filter the flow of water, nothing is ever going to change. And that's really what it is. It all stems from a very dysfunctional H-1B program.
Right. And it's all part of a game that has been played for decades. On my father's side, my great-grandfather came to the U.S. from Lithuania, and he went to work in the coal mines in Pennsylvania up by Nazareth. Eventually succumbed and died to black lung. But he was an activist. He was one of those people. He was he was part of that early movement when the Slavs were joining with the Irish and the Germans, and fighting for their rights. And we kind of we're in that position today. We may not be coal miners, but we are computer programmers. We are troubleshooters in call centers. We are doctors. We are accountants. We are logisticians, and we are losing our jobs, and it is not by accident. There's some very arbitrary decisions were made, I believe, to, as I said before, asset strip this country. We saw it initially back in the early 1990s with treaties like NAFTA, GATT, eventually the WTO, where they moved our manufacturing overseas. And now they're literally stripping out the intellectual property, and they're doing it by using these employment visa programs to displace the Americans and then move that property, that intellectual property overseas. And, you know, every American will benefit from reforming the H-1B program, which is, I'm really glad to see your group is, one, focused on stopping this, but you understand what the bigger picture is and how these employment visas are used to displace, as opposed to what you'd like to see, augmenting the U.S. workforce.
Absolutely. It's the augmenting part that we focus on. That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, Adele, is there anything else you would like to share with the U.S. Tech Workers audience?
Yeah, please go to our website, take a look at it. It's www.nohr1044.com. We also own a bunch of other domains. We've got nos386.com, goes to this site also. It's all the same thing. You take a look at our position statement. On the position link is our blog. You can download our white paper on the links page. It's on the mission. It's on the about page. And we thank you. We really look forward to really winning this battle. And at the end of the day, hopefully the end result here is reform. That's really the end result of this. And that's really what we want to try and push the message.
Yeah, and there's some great alliances forming and some great people rising. We have, you know, folks like Hillary Gamm out there, the author of the book Billions Lost, John Miano, the author of the book Sold Out, Ron Hira, who I mentioned, the professor at Howard University, providing that kind of intellectual guidance. But then we have groups like Protect U.S. Workers and others that are forming out there. So, and as you state in your mission statement, Adele, you know, but we cannot fight this battle alone. If you are a worker in the United States and you're feeling job insecure, you need to visit U.S. Tech Workers. You need to be part of this movement. And we'll stress to you, no one's going to come and save you. No one's going to come and save me. No one's going to come and save you, Adele. We're going to have to do it ourselves. And in a democracy, the way you do that is by taking political action. The only solution here will be a political one, and that's going to require us to put pressure on our local representatives, our local congressmen, our state senator, and give them the cover they need when the lobbyists come in and are financing their campaigns. You want them to say, well, I don't care how much money you give me. If I vote yes on 1044, my constituents are going to throw me out of office. And that's what we have to do.
That's exactly right. And that's what our white paper does. So please download our white paper, send it to your local representative, send them an email, tell them not to vote yes on this, tell them to vote no. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me through the website. We've got a chat link there, a contact page there, and we're happy to help. And again, it's www.nohr1044.com. And we were really the original ones that talked about, you know, diversity and skilled legal immigration, and we're happy to help you.
All right. Well, Adele, thanks so much. So to our listening audience, this is going to be posted to our YouTube channel. If you like this conversation, please give us a thumbs up, and better yet, subscribe to our channel. And that way you're made aware of the next time we put up a video or a podcast like this. And be sure to visit our website. There's ways that you can join, get our newsletter. Our newsletter goes out every Friday morning. Take care and be safe out there. It's Memorial Day is on Monday, so we have a long weekend. Enjoy, imbibe, be safe, and get involved.